The message was never meant for her. It was meant for a quiet corner of loneliness, for a moment of weakness that slipped between exhaustion and longing. Yet there was sent, delivered, to the one person who could unravel everything I had carefully held together. And then, just when I thought the damage couldn't get worse, her reply lit up my phone in broad daylight. What should I wear tonight? If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Heartfelt Stories. You never know whose story might need your support today. Mornings in my world always began the same way. Sunlight sneaking through worn-out curtains, the smell of instant coffee, and the quiet rustle of my daughter Syra, getting ready for school. Life had been stripped down to its essentials after my wife passed away 3 years ago. Every day was a careful balance between being a father, an employee, and someone still trying to make sense of grief that never really left. I had learned to survive in routines. Pack Cyrus lunch, walk her to the bus stop, rush to the office, smile when needed, stay silent when it hurt. There was no room for mistakes because everything depended on me staying steady. That morning, though, something felt different. Maybe it was the way the sunlight felt warmer than usual, or how Syra hugged me a little tighter before leaving. Or maybe it was just one of those days when the heart feels heavier without warning. Work had been relentless lately. Deadlines stacked on top of each other, expectations rising, and at the center of it all was my boss, Mahira Qureshi. She was known across the company for her sharp mind and impossibly high standards. People respected her, but they also feared disappointing her. I was no exception. Yet, beneath her composed exterior, there was something else I couldn't quite define. A quiet patience, perhaps, or a way of noticing things others overlooked. She had once stayed late just to help me fix a report, even though it wasn't her responsibility. That memory stayed with me longer than I admitted. By midday, the pressure had built up enough that I found myself staring blankly at my phone during lunch. I had been texting someone I had recently started talking to online. It wasn't anything serious, just a fragile attempt to feel human again, to remember what it was like to be seen beyond responsibilities and grief. In a moment of distraction, I typed something light, something I hadn't said in years, a playful, slightly flirty message meant to test the waters of life I wasn't sure I was ready for. My fingers moved faster than my thoughts, and before I could double-check, I hit send. Seconds later, my heart stopped. The name at the top of the screen wasn't the person I intended. It was Mahira Qureshi. The world seemed to narrow into a single point. My chest tightened, my hands turned cold, and the office noise faded into a distant hum. I reread the message over and over, hoping it would somehow change, hoping reality would bend just enough to undo what I had done. But it didn't. I considered everything, apologizing immediately, pretending it was meant for someone else, or simply disappearing into silence. None of it felt right. None of it felt survivable. Then my phone buzzed. Her reply appeared, calm and almost casual. What should I wear tonight? For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. It wasn't anger. It wasn't confusion. It was something entirely unexpected, something that shifted the ground beneath me. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Every email I sent felt mechanical. Every task felt distant. My mind kept circling back to that message, trying to decode it, trying to understand what it meant. Was it sarcasm, a test, or something else entirely? When the workday ended, I walked out of the office slower than usual. The evening air carried a softness that contrasted sharply with the storm inside me. I reached home, greeted by Cyrus' laughter as she told me about her day. For a moment, everything felt normal again, grounded, but the question lingered. Later that night, after Syra had fallen asleep, I sat alone with my phone in hand. The glow of the screen illuminated a face that looked more tired than I felt. I typed a response, erased it, typed again, erased again. Words felt dangerous now, like stepping onto thin ice. Eventually, I settled on honesty, not perfect, not polished, but real. I acknowledged a mistake, the unintended message, and the confusion that followed. I didn't try to be clever. I didn't try to hide. For the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to be vulnerable. Her response didn't come immediately. Hours passed. The silence stretched, heavy but not unbearable. Somewhere in that waiting, I realized something unexpected. I wasn't just afraid of losing my job. I was afraid of losing the fragile connection that had somehow formed beneath all the professionalism and distance. The next morning, I arrived at the office early. The sunlight streamed through the glass windows, casting long shadows across the floor. Everything looked the same, yet it felt entirely different. When she finally walked in, there was no dramatic confrontation, no raised voices, just a brief glance in my direction, steady and unreadable. The day unfolded as usual, meetings, tasks, conversations. But beneath it all was an unspoken tension that refused to fade. By afternoon, she called me into her office. The room felt quieter than usual, as if even the air was holding its breath. She didn't start with the message. Instead, she spoke about work, about responsibilities, about expectations. Her tone was composed, measured. Then, gradually, the conversation shifted. She spoke about loneliness, not directly, not explicitly, but in a way that felt deeply personal. About how life doesn't always follow the paths we plan. About how sometimes people carry more than they show. In that moment, I saw her differently. Not just as a boss, but as someone who understood more than she let on. The message, it turned out, wasn't the disaster I had imagined. It was a mistake, yes, but also a window. A brief, unexpected glimpse into the parts of ourselves we keep hidden. Days turned into weeks, and something subtle began to change. Our interactions became less rigid, more human. There was still professionalism, still boundaries, but also a quiet understanding that hadn't existed before. At home, life continued its rhythm. Cyrus' laughter, her questions, her small victories. They remained my anchor. But now, there was a new layer to my days. A sense that maybe, just maybe, life wasn't done offering surprises. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of gold, I found myself reflecting on how a single mistake had shifted everything. Not dramatically, not in a way that made headlines, but in a quiet, meaningful way that felt real. Sometimes, life doesn't need grand gestures to change. Sometimes, it's the accidental moments, the unintended messages, the small cracks in our carefully built walls that let the light in. If this story has touched your heart even a little, take a moment to share, and leave a comment. Your support helps these stories reach others who might need them. And before we reach the end, here's a special request. Comment below and share a moment in your life when a mistake led to something unexpectedly beautiful. Because in the end, it wasn't about the message. It wasn't about the fear or the embarrassment. It was about what came after. The courage to be honest, the willingness to see each other beyond roles, and the quiet hope that even in the most unexpected ways, life can begin again,